Hi, and welcome to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast presented by Wolf Precision Incorporated, where we learn about and share long range shooting and custom rifle building. I am your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. Hi, and welcome to episode 85 of Wolf Precision's Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building podcast. I'm your host, Jamie Dotson, and welcome to the show. In this episode, we are going to discuss the 4 pillars of laying a great foundation for fundamentals of marksmanship. We just finished up a long range shooting school that finished on Wednesday, and it's always amazing to spend time with students and to learn what is getting them up to speed and what they've picked up on in the class and things that have helped them. And one of the things that is a big deal is actually building your foundation on solid ground. So we're going to discuss some upcoming episodes in which we're going to label the 4 pillars for laying a great foundation for the fundamentals of marksmanship. We're also excited to talk to you about the Ailer 89. We have one en route as we speak. And throw out that question: does your ballistic coefficient change as your barrel gets older? Great question. We're going to dive into that in a minute. So thank you so much for joining us. But without further ado, here we go. So this podcast is proudly brought to you by Wolf Precision Inc., home of the Ace and some of the most advanced rifles in the world, where you can come and learn how to build and maintain your own custom rifle using technology that's never been done before in the history of rifles. So we're excited to be part of that, and as well as don't forget about our long-range shooting schools and our up-and-coming reloading classes. So we'd like to thank Wolf Precision for proudly sponsoring this show and being a part of it to make it happen. All right, so diving into the 4 pillars or laying a great foundation for the fundamentals of marksmanship. So I'm very blessed in the fact that I get to spend my time at the shooting range with clients from basically around the world and from tons of different backgrounds. And I learn a lot about the art of teaching and watching different things that work and don't work for different customers, as well as all of the really cool things that we get to be part of as these customers learn and grow. One of the things that really struck a chord with me with this last class that we just finished up on Wednesday was we had 2 older gentlemen, probably in their, maybe in the 60s, late 50s, early 60s, been hunting and shooting their whole lives, have killed countless big game animals around the country, have harvested with both rifle and bow, and certainly have killed more big game animals than I have. However, though, after the first day of class, they came and said, unbelievable, all the things that they thought they knew, all of these little details that we're sharing, all of these things that make a huge difference are there. And everything that they thought they knew, a lot of it was wrong or just gray areas. And so they've built this foundation for shooting on soft ground, on sand. And so you struggle and you work and you struggle and you work, and no matter how much you work on these fundamentals, because you've laid that foundation not on solid ground, there's a price to pay for that. And what was really cool is we spent the first day in class, and we went, of course, our class are set up to, we do the classrooms in the morning and we do range time in the afternoon. But the first day of class, we really get into the fundamentals of marksmanship. And not just the fundamentals, but really the little details, these tiny things that matter. And I consider them almost like the 4 corners or the 4 pillars to laying a great foundation for the fundamentals of marksmanship. You know, so we've got to get these pillars established on a solid platform. And the pillars sort of work like this. So if you think about like holding a house up in the 4 corners, we want these foundations laid deep and we want them on solid ground. The first pillar that I think is really important is just simply the setup itself. Over the years, I've got a chance to watch thousands of students come through the school, and I pick up on the things that they're doing different with the bag and just how important the setup is. I mean, I even go as far as to say, look, if you're going to the range and having a bad day, things aren't going well, just stop shooting. Step back and look at your setup. The little things like the rear bag being twisted or a straight line falling off an edge or the butt pad or the heel or toe of the rifle digging in or catching on, pushing. There's all these little minute things that happen just simply in the setup alone that can cause you all kinds of heartache and just struggle to get good working and good shooting groups out there. The second thing is when you're laying and you're talking about laying, these 4 pillars that you're going to build on to become a great shooter is preparing to take the shot. You, the shooter with the rifle, all the things that you must do to prepare mentally and physically to take that shot. The third pillar that you're going to set up on is learning the art of firing the perfect shot. So when you go through preparation, you still have to fire the rifle. Now, I always warn people that bad preparation, or when you talk about pillar number 2, if you don't get that right, the problems continue on. So you pass off that problem or that weak pillar right on to your firing of the perfect shot. Same thing with your setup. So the third pillar, in which we're going to talk about in this upcoming episode, is going to be firing the perfect shot. And then the last pillar that's going to be the foundation, that's going to be set on the solid foundation of really becoming a world-class shooter, is follow-through. All the things that really you have to do right, and all the things you have to pay attention to, things you have to let naturally happen without you negatively influencing it. Because let's face it, the rifle will shoot perfectly fine if we don't touch it. It's only when we get involved in it that we have a tendency to screw everything up, right? And so that follow-through is the fourth corner. And then when you take those 4 corners, the tabletop that goes on those 4 pillars is what we call a mental checklist. And getting yourself in a system that checks each of those before you shoot. And so we're going to work on this over the next couple of podcasts and try to dive into one in just a lot more detail. The reason being is, and I'm going to have to contact the students because they took all their targets with them, of course, and I'll try to take some pictures, but the students that came through the class, the very first groups out of every single student at 100 yards, prone with a bipod, some were in the 1s, some were in the 2s, none were over 0.3. That's incredible. The 2 older gentlemen that were in the class come off the rifles and was like, oh my God, I've never shot like that in my life. And, the second day came around for the shooting school. So the shooting school is 3 days. There's just so much subjects to cover. And at the end of the day, like we started class on day 3, they said, oh my God, all the things that we learned on day 2, like they're shooting gallon water jugs just for fun, of course, at 1,000 yards. One shot on a 10 by 14 inch plate, which a 10-inch ring is about the size of a 1,000-yard bench ring. At 1,000 yards, about a 5-inch group on a 10-inch plate at 1,000 yards. You really have to be fundamentally sound to do that. We have a life-size coyote out there, the skinned, by the way, what the actual body of the coyote is, and just hitting it over and over again. A water jug is about 8 inches by 9 inches. We're varmint hunters, so we like to throw some fun stuff out there that blows up or pops when you shoot it. So they're just for some of the little things that we do. We have some Top Gun hats and some other stuff that we do, fun shooting. But you think about having a shooter that's never shot anything beyond 200 yards, and by day 2, they're shooting an 8 by 9 inch water jug, and one of them hit it on the first shot. That's amazing. And again, the feedback from the students, who, by the way, very well educated, seasoned hunters, smart people, laid their foundation on soft ground and didn't really understand the pillars that it all sets on. And the comments after each day was the amazement of all the things that they thought they knew, the house that they were building on, the pillars that were holding it all up were all wrong. And how all these little things in these areas just totally changed their shooting forever. So they assumed, of course, it's a long-range shooting school, and they thought, hey, we'll come here, we're going to learn some stuff, this is going to be a lot of fun, and it is. But they came away with just what they thought they were going to come and get with 100 times, changing their shooting forever, changing how they shoot, how they approach with shooting, how they think of shooting, and shot like they've never shot in their entire adult lives. Actually, shooting with a bipod and shooting groups that really should be for bench rest only. That's how great they shot. And I didn't shoot the guns for them. They had to do all the work. But it's about laying these proper foundations and having a way to make sure that these 4 pillars are solid before you shoot. And so I'm going to go into this into much greater detail on the next couple podcasts and talk about this, because really I want to try to help you get the most you can out of your rifle, get the most you can out of your shooting, and really have fun. Don't make shooting a frustrating sport. Don't go to the range and leave like, this sucks. I know I can do better than this. And let us help you. There's no charge for the podcast, of course. This is something that we do. We take time out of every week just to try to pass on, hopefully, what's great information to help you. It's sort of our way of giving back to the community that has changed our lives and allowed us to be in the industry that we're in and enjoy spending time with you at the range. So I hope you tune in for these podcasts. They'll be coming up next. They'll be our next series. And I think it's really important to dive into this much deeper, just simply because of the life-changing effect it had on the last class. And it was really nice to get the feedback in almost like a real-world application of what they thought they knew and how all these little things that we're teaching turned it on its head and really changed their type of shooting. So looking forward to it. We're going to dive into it next week in the podcast itself, with the first one being proper setup of the rifle. Now, I am excited to announce that we have, a Ailer 89 en route from the great state of Texas, and I am super excited. The reason I'm super excited is one of the things that, if you hear me talk at the school and you've listened to previous podcasts, that causes a lot of shooters heartache is dope. Getting good working dope for your rifle. Dope stands for data of previous engagements. And there's so much theory, there's so much guessing, there's so much information out there with everybody all over the place on how they approach it, and they insist they're right and they insist that their way's right. It really hurts a lot of shooters because, for example, when we bring people here through the shooting school itself, we don't give them a working chart for the rifle. Even though we're an issued rifle school, we could do that. We actually build the chart with them through the class. So we start with no dope on the guns whatsoever, no charts whatsoever. At the end of the day, we chronograph, we make charts, we teach you all the stuff. The second day, we issue the charts, we teach you how to make them. Then, here's the one, is we teach you how to fix it, because they're always off. And there's tons of different theories in this, and I'm not saying who's right or wrong, but one of the theories is when they're fixing dope for distance is they want you to true your bullet speed to correct for your impact. I have a little bit of a problem with this one because the bullet speed is the only thing that we know is right. So we have our scope height, of course, which is common information we need. We need our weather conditions, which is barometric pressure, humidity, density, altitude, if you're using that. There's other parameters, temperature, all these environments, but the only thing that we know is right, hopefully with a good chronograph, is the speed, and that's the first thing they want to change to correct your dope. The other thing that gets involved in this is, we've got the BC, the ballistic coefficient assigned by the factory, and how they go about getting those numbers. Well, years past, I really think that a lot of them sort of fibbed a little bit. I don't think they outright lied or deceived, but I think there was a race to have the highest BC, this sort of bragging rights to the shooters, or there's that pressure on them to produce ultra high BCs because they have to beat out the next guy. Everybody wants that super high BC for long range shooting, of course. But one of the issues is in how we sort of attack fixing dope, and this might change too because there's another program coming with Oler. It's a PC-based system, but we're going to try to work with it because this system in its entirety can give us fantastic working dope for a rifle. So we've got it coming. It should be here maybe even next week for us to start working with it. But one of the things that I'm after, and here's where the question in the podcast came from. We have had the opportunity for, and at the school, we're going on 13, 14 years old. I've been shooting my entire, adult life and most of my childhood. But at the school, the one thing we get the opportunity to do is start barrels from scratch or childhood with no rounds through them and run them to the end and replace them and run them to the end and replace them. We have replaced more barrels and shot them from beginning to end in 1 year than most people will shoot in a lifetime. So, for example, this year, just at the school alone, we're going to go through 8 to 10 barrels. We're getting ready to do barrel changes already. So we've already got our second barrels for the season ready to roll. We've almost shot out our first set of barrels. Now, part of that has to do with the fact that we run them hot, not load-wise, but when the rifles get warm at the school, they really never get a chance to cool down. So they take a lot more abuse than the average rifle as well, and we're doing some things to try to combat that, of course. But one of the things that stuck out in this last class, because this older thing is stuck in my head, right? Why do we want to know the true BC of the bullet? This is the one thing that they're saying that they can get for you. But then I was thinking at the class, so for example, this one, we're getting close to the end of life. The 22 Creedmoors we're shooting at the school are setting at rate of 1,500 rounds. And by the way, at the beginning of the class, shot groups in the 1s and 2s. They are far from being shot out. But we have the replacement barrels on standby. So I'm super excited that the round count's that high. We're running 75 grain bullets at 3,400 feet per second. Some people thought that they wouldn't make it 900 to 1,000 rounds. We're setting at almost 1,500 rounds. The rifles are shield shooting grade. The throats and barrels actually still look fantastic. I bore scoped them out yesterday after the class and cleaned them. But here's the thing. What's happening to the BC as these barrels break down? Is it changing your BC as the barrels age? And in doing so, changing your dope of your rifle? An example would be this particular class, as we're getting close to 1,500 rounds, with all the correct barometric pressure, altitude, humidity, all the things that we need for environments. We know environment wasn't the issue. We know the speed. We have a chronograph. The speeds haven't changed. But systematically, in this particular class, the dope was off at 1,000 yards. Now, we know this. We don't tell the students this. We issue them the chart as it's made from scratch, and then we teach them how to true the chart, because this is what they're going to have to do when they go home. We don't want to issue a click chart that's true to the gun, thinking that we just printed that and it works that easy. That's far from the truth. You've got to do a little bit of work to fix these charts. But at 1,000 yards, and we proof them as we go, and we adjust as we go. So they were off at 1,000 yards about 3 to 4 tenths of a mil. Quite a bit more than what they were through the earlier part of the year. And I don't want to say that there's a pattern with this yet, but then I got to really thinking about this older and all the great information, because when we're trying to get dope for the rifle, we know the curvature of the bore has an issue with it. I mean, if you've got the curvature of the bore pointing up, down, left, and right, it certainly has to have an issue when the bullet leaves the barrel as to the trueness of the chart, because most of your charts have the bullet going straight out the barrel. We know the speed for sure. We know our dope at distance when we hit. We can shoot a group and measure to center. But the one piece that we're missing is the ballistic coefficient, a correct number, not just what the manufacturer says, but to what it is coming out of your barrel. We also are able to get our time of flight, which I think becomes part of that equation, truing your BC with the AILR system. But one thing that dawned on me a lot was, over the years, as the barrels wear and break in, is our BC changing? Or think of it this way, are we getting a much wider standard deviation from shot to shot with the BC as the barrels break in or break down? As they get close to their end of life, are you starting to get vertical stringing high and low because the bullets are being sort of abused going through the rifling, so to say? And at some point, does that start to spread apart to where, yeah, the rifle's still capable of shooting a great group at 100 yards, which these rifles are. They shot lights out. And they actually shot really well at distance. But is the BC starting to break down for standard deviation, so the long stuff that's going to come out and start causing issues high and low on target? Not only that, but just giving us, when we start making these charts, a true ballistic coefficient for the bullet in that gun to start with. How much closer our click charts are really going to be to being accurate, because we've now got true scientific data for one of the parameters that we actually are guessing at. That's huge. And so I always thought that a lot of these programs that right away were attacking the bullet speed to try to true up your long distance dope, I might be wrong on this one. I'm not an engineer by trade, but I always thought that was the wrong way to approach it, because as a shooter and as someone who's passionate about this and has someone as much time on a firing line as possible, that is a known number. Why are we changing that one first? We don't know our time of flight to the target. Most people have no way of measuring it. We are guessing at the ballistic coefficient, and you've got the curvature of the bore, which is an unknown entity. When your barrel gets spun on your rifle, factory guns are more vulnerable to this than custom. Customs usually have with the barrels a tolerance that to hold. Like, for example, Krieger has a red line in the sand that they won't allow to leave the factory if the curvature of the bore is beyond a certain point. But that said, you still have this to work with, right? And so when we were able to get one more piece of the puzzle and not have to guess at it, now we're down to the curvature of the bore and what effect it is having on our dope. Because now we've got the bullet speed. I believe Ayler said that they had to have the speed to 0.01% correct for this system to work. I could be wrong. It might be 0.1%, but I thought they said 0.01. And I'll update the podcast when I actually get it here and I'm able to go through the entire system and start working with it. But we're able to now have a true speed, a super accurate speed. We have our scope height. We know what that is. We have our weather conditions with the Kestrel. We know what they are. We now are able to get time of flight and a true ballistic coefficient, leaving the last parameter is the curvature of the bore, which we can fix. We can sort of tune that up a lot easier. But when you combine the fact that we don't know our time of flight, we don't know the true BC out of our gun, all these things coming together, it can really make for some really off rifles according to a click chart you just print off the computer or a program you enter in all of this stuff, because there's things they don't know. They don't know your true BC. They don't know your time of flight. They're guessing. They don't know the curvature of the bore. And so we have a way that we fix it. It's a little bit different, and we've covered this in previous podcasts, and I don't want to go into it too much in detail here, but we always adjust the scope height first so we can keep your arc or the travel of the bullet and flight intact. So we don't want to automatically start bending the curve all over the place, because assuming that the speed is right, the arc is probably pretty close. So the first thing we'll do to try to true our click chart is we'll adjust the entire bell curve intact up and down just by adjusting our scope height ever so slightly. The next thing, which is why the Ayler is so exciting, is we would start tuning the ballistic coefficient. And the very last thing, if we have an extreme issue, would be the bullet speed. That's the order that we've approached it in, because the bullet speed is the one thing that we know hopefully is true with a good piece of equipment. So we're super excited to get it here. It should ship soon. I think they said it's going out today. This is going to be something that we'll have at the school, and it's also going to be part of our open range day. So for guys that would like to come in and shoot over it, that have been through the school, spend the day with us, get some great information on their rifle. It's a little bit of an investment on Wolf Precision's part. The unit's about $3,000. Plus, there's other things you have to purchase. So, till it's all said and done, we might have close to $5,000 in it until we buy the PC and we buy some of the other stuff. So, it is a little bit of an investment for truing a BC, but that question is in my head. Is your BC breaking down or changing as the barrel gets older, as the barrel starts breaking down, as the bore starts changing through roughness and through fire cracking and all the damage that gets done in there? And then also, more importantly, is your ballistic coefficient standard deviation starting to fall away? Just like we think it's so important to have a great SD or standard deviation when we're working on our reloads, from reload to reload or shot to shot, and we put such emphasis on that at distance and how true that speed has to be from shot to shot to hit small targets. And that's true. You really have to do that. But imagine if your BC starts to fluctuate. Wouldn't it have the same effect as your speed having a wide standard deviation? If you're getting a wide SD on your BC as the barrel breaks down, wouldn't that be a red flag that You still might be shooting great at 100 yards, but at distance, you're going to start to get that high and low stringing, or your BC's breaking down, causing you to have to consistently adjust your dope. Wouldn't it be nice to know that the 22 Creeds of 1,500 rounds to BCs have broke down a little bit, and now being what we thought they were, we now have to drop that, let's just say from 4.76 to 4.56 to start hitting center again. And then as the barrels keep breaking down, we re-chronograph them and readjust it. Wouldn't that be a nice thing to know? And so we've made the investment. We have one coming. I'm looking forward to getting it here and working on it. Now, before we get into something special that we got in the works with Aylor, I do want to say a quick thank you to TriggerTech. They're a proud sponsor of the show. We really appreciate them being part of the program. We do use their triggers in our custom rifles here, as well as we have them in our showroom. You can come and try them out. We actually have a trigger mechanism that it's a 2-stage, you can come in and work the bolt and try them out. But I'm a big fan of TriggerTech simply because they're very easy to adjust. They're user-friendly. They're a safe trigger. They're a roller bearing design that allows you to have a safe self-cleaning trigger. So if you want a great trigger for your rifle, or if you're building a custom rifle, stop over to triggertech.com. That's triggertech.com today. We'd also like to thank MDT, proud sponsor of the show. We have lots of their stocks here in the showroom, and they just sent us a couple more, along with the new HNT 26, which is on its way. So we're going to have open house days here. So our showroom is by appointment only through the week because we are here working. And then we're going to announce open house days where you can come in, and we're going to be open to the public, and you can come in and check out our facility. You can look at all the different stocks and, talk shooting. That's awesome. We'll have those dates being announced soon. We are waiting for about 6 or 7 more stocks to get here to get our wall complete. With the most popular stocks that are on the market today. So thank you so much, MDT, for all the help you've been through the years and for the stocks that you put up on the wall for us here for the customers to see. We really appreciate it. Now, for some exciting news for Aylor. Aylor has got something really cool going on with this. I think there's information here that could be useful to us, the shooters, hence that's why we bought it. But we're excited to announce that we're going to invite them to join us the day before our moving target school on November 12th. So we're teaching a long-range shooting school in Vidalia, Georgia, where that is going to start in January, February, and March when the weather's not very nice here. We've been invited down to a private facility, but we're going to teach a private class there in November with some clients, and then we're going to move on from there straight to the moving target class, and that's going to be the 13th and 14th of November. If you'd like to register for that, you can go over to wolfprecision.net and see that. But we're talking to Aylor right now about coming in on the 11th and 12th to the facility and setting up and demoing the system for the clients and for the listeners of the podcast. So we're excited to announce that. It's getting the details sort of finalized now. We're thinking the 12th for sure, maybe making it a 2-day event, the 11th and 12th, to where we can have a group of students and listeners come in on the 11th and see it, and on the 12th come in and see it, so we can get more people to come in and actually demo it and see what it's all about. Meet the designers, the engineers behind the scene, and actually get a chance to shoot over. I think that's going to be really exciting. We're also going to bring them on the podcast as well to have them come through, and after we get the system here and run it for a while, be able to ask them some more educated questions once we get it in hand. Also, I wanted to announce that we are putting up our long-range shooting school dates for 2022. They are going to be limited for next year. We have 3 announced for Vidalia, Georgia. They're January, February, March, 4 students in the class still. You can register for those now. We have people signing up. And we have our classes for our long-range shooting school here in Somerset, Pennsylvania, live and open for registration. We have customers that ask that we post them up in August so they can take time off the following year, give them time to take a vacation or whatever they would like to do that. So we'd love to invite you out and join us here for next year for 2022. They are limited. We aren't going to do as many shooting schools because our business is growing on the other end. And we're trying to incorporate some of the open range days for people to come in and use the Aylor system and do advanced training as well. So stop over to wolfprecision.net. That's wolfprecision.net. And you can check out all of the details there. So I'll keep you up to date. The next podcast that we're going to start into is our 4 pillars for laying a great foundation for the fundamentals of marksmanship. That will start next week. Looking forward to having you. And I'd like to thank everybody for taking the time to join us here at the show. If you like the show, if you don't mind sharing it, we really appreciate that. If you don't mind leaving us a nice review either on our Facebook page or on a Google search or even on the forum or hosting network that you're listening to this podcast on, that really helps a lot with the ratings and helps us here as well, getting the podcast out and about, hopefully getting good information out there to great customers and great shooters. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us. My name is Jamie Dotson. I'm your host, and you are listening to the Long Range Shooting and Custom Rifle Building Podcast.